Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some really cool AI stuff today, image generation, specifically one-step diffusion models.
One step.
Yeah. So you know how diffusion models usually take a ton of steps to create an image?
Right, refining it gradually.
Exactly. Well, imagine squeezing all that into just one step.
Wow, that's got to be fast.
Super fast. And we're looking at a new framework called SNOOPI that's really pushing the limits here.
SNOOPI.
Yeah, it stands for Supercharged One-Step Diffusion Distillation with Proper Guidance. Sounds cute, but it's tackling some big challenges. Have you ever been frustrated by how unstable these models can be during training?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You tweak one thing and the whole thing can just crash.
It's a pain. And then there's the lack of negative prompting, being able to say, hey, I don't want this in my image.
Like being able to control what the AI doesn't create.
Exactly. SNOOPI's taking that on too.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that, let's quickly recap how diffusion models actually work.
Sure. Think of it like adding noise to a perfectly clear image until it's just random pixels.
Like turning a beautiful photo into static on a TV screen.
Right. And a diffusion model learns to reverse that process. It starts with noise and slowly removes it, guided by a text prompt until you have a clear image.
So with one-step models, it's doing all that denoising in one go.
Precisely. And the research we're looking at today focuses on a really cool approach, image-free training. They're using models like SwiftBrush v2 that learn entirely from text prompts. No need for huge data sets of images.
Wow, talk about efficiency.
Uh,
But the paper also talks about how tough it can be to train these models. They're notoriously unstable.
Yeah, and that's where SNOPI's first trick comes in, Proper Guidance-SwiftBrush. They call it PGSB for short.
TGSB. Okay, what is that?
It's actually a pretty clever solution. So traditionally, you have a fixed guidance scale that tells the model how closely to follow the text prompt.
Okay, makes sense.
But PGSB randomly changes that guidance scale throughout the training process.
So it's like shaking things up a bit, keeping the model on its toes.
Exactly, and that helps to make the training way more stable across different model architectures.
That's pretty smart. But what about the negative prompting? How does SNOPI handle that? The research mentions that using the typical method, CFG, doesn't really work well with one-step models.
You're right. Classifier-free guidance, or CFG, just leads to weird image blending and artifacts when you try to use it for one-step generation.
Figure 3 in the paper shows that so clearly. It's like the AI is trying to cram multiple images together.
Yeah, it's just not designed for that. So SNOPI introduces a new method, negative away steer attention, or NASA.
NASA. Okay, I'm intrigued.
This is where it gets really cool. NASA actually works on the cross-attention layers within the model. Those are the parts that connect the image features to the text prompt.
So instead of trying to fix the image at the end, it's working behind the scenes during the generation process.
Exactly. It's like filtering out the unwanted elements before the image is even fully formed.
That's amazing. And looking at figures 5 and 6 in the research, you could really see how effective it is. It's removing unwanted features without messing up things like the pose or background.
Yeah, it's super precise. And the best part is SNOPI does all this while being incredibly efficient. Remember, it's trained only on text prompts, no need for huge image data sets.
So SNOPI is stable, efficient, and gives us this awesome level of control with negative prompting. But how do we know it's actually any good? How did they measure its performance?
Well, they use a bunch of different metrics. Of course, there's the classic FID score, but they went beyond that. They actually focused on HPS v2, which stands for Human Preference Score v2.
So they're actually asking people which images they prefer. No fancy algorithms, just good old-fashioned human judgment.
Exactly. But they also use other metrics like CLIP score, precision, recall, the whole works.
Like putting SNOPI through a battery of tests. So how did it do?
It aced them. Across the board, SNOPI achieved top scores. And get this, when they used the PixArt model as a backbone, SNOPI actually set a new benchmark HPS v2 score of 31.08.
Wow. And all without relying on massive image datasets. That's a big deal.
It really is. This research is pointing to some major possibilities for one-step diffusion models.
Absolutely. But where does all this lead? What are the real-world implications of this kind of technology?
Well, think about all the industries that rely on visual content. Advertising, entertainment, design, even education.
Imagine creating photorealistic product mock-ups in seconds, or building immersive virtual worlds for games with just a few text prompts.
Exactly. The potential is huge. But of course, with any powerful technology, we need to be aware of the limitations.
Right. There's always a flip side. What are some of the caveats with SNOPI?
Well, one thing is that the PGSB component, the one that helps with stability during training, is currently only compatible with one-step models.
So there's still some work to be done to adapt it for other types of diffusion models.
Yes, definitely. But this is a very active area of research, so I'm sure we'll see progress there.
What about NASA? Any limitations with that?
Well, NASA works really well for negative prompting, but its success really depends on finding the right scale factor. This factor controls how much influence the negative prompt has on the final image.
So it's like finding the right balance. You don't want the negative prompt to be too weak or too strong.
Precisely. It's about finding that sweet spot. And while the research suggests that this tuning process isn't super complicated, it's still something to keep in mind.
Got it. Any other things to be aware of?
One more thing. Right now, NASA works best with models that use cross-attention layers. So there are some architectural limitations to consider.
That's a good point. It's a reminder that even the most impressive breakthroughs are just stepping stones to even greater advancements.
Exactly. But SNOOPI is a pretty amazing stepping stone. It's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with one-step diffusion models.
It really makes you think about what the future holds for AI image generation. It's incredible how far this technology has come in such a short time. But as we're all wowed by these advancements, it's important to remember that they don't exist in a vacuum.
You're absolutely right. We need to be mindful of the ethical implications of this technology.
The research actually acknowledges the potential for misuse.
Yeah.
Like creating misleading or harmful content. It's a sobering reminder that we need to be having these conversations about responsible AI development.
Absolutely. We need to be thinking about the potential impact, both positive and negative, and develop safeguards to ensure responsible use.
It's like navigating uncharted territory here. There are so many possibilities, but we need to proceed with caution and foresight.
I agree. This technology has the potential to unlock amazing levels of creativity and innovation, but we need to make sure it benefits humanity as a whole.
It's a balancing act, for sure. But this deep dive into SNOOPI has been fascinating, hasn't it? We've covered so much ground, from the technical details to the potential applications and even the ethical considerations.
It's been a great discussion, and it highlights how important it is to have these open and honest conversations about AI. Innovation doesn't happen in isolation. It requires collaboration, careful thought, and a commitment to responsible development.
And ultimately, it's up to all of us to shape the future of this technology. So we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on SNOOPI and the future of AI image generation? What excites you? What concerns you? These are important questions to consider as we venture into this uncharted territory together.
Definitely. We're all on this journey together. They really put SNOOPI through its paces, to really understand how well it performs. They used a whole bunch of different ways to measure it. Like we talked about HPSV2, which is all about what humans think looks best.
Right.
But they didn't just stop there. They also looked at things like Xiaol.x score precision and recall, even that traditional FID score.
So it was like a full exam for SNOOPI.
Exactly. They wanted to make sure it was the real deal.
Okay, so we talked about HPSV2 being about human perception. But what do these other metrics tell us about SNOOPI? Like, what is Xiaol.x score?
Well, Xiaol.x score is all about how well the image that SNOOPI creates actually matches the text prompt you give it.
So if I say a cat wearing a top hat riding a unicycle on the moon, Xiaol.x score tells us how well SNOOPI nails that very specific vision.
Exactly. It's about making sure the AI really gets what you're asking for.
And SNOOPI does well with that.
Oh, yeah. It consistently scores high in that area, which shows that it can really capture the nuances of language and translate those into images.
It's like so the 2OPI is bilingual, speaking both the language of words and pictures.
I like that.
So what about those other two? You mentioned precision and recall. What do those tell us?
Those are all about the overall quality and variety of the images SNOOPI generates. It's not just about making one or two amazing images. It's about being able to consistently produce high quality and diverse results, no matter what kind of prompt you throw at it.
So SNOOPI is not just a one-hit wonder. It's a reliable creative partner.
That's a great way to put it.
And on top of that, we can't forget how efficient SNOOPI is. Remember, it's doing all this without needing huge data sets of images to learn from.
Right, which makes it even more appealing for real-world applications.
Speaking of real-world applications, how do you see this research impacting the world outside of the lab? What are the possibilities here?
The potential is huge. Think about all the industries that rely on visual content, advertising, entertainment design, even education.
It's true. Almost every field uses images in some way.
Imagine being able to generate photorealistic product mock-ups in just seconds, or create immersive virtual worlds for games, all with just a few text prompts.
Or how about personalized educational materials, tailor-made illustrations for every student's learning style?
Exactly. This research is laying the groundwork for some truly revolutionary applications.
It's exciting to think about. But let's be real, every new technology has its limitations.
Yeah.
What are some of the caveats with SNOAI?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that the PGSB component, the one that helps with training stability, is currently only compatible with one-step models.
So there's still some work to do to make it work for other types of diffusion models.
Yes, that's true. But this is a rapidly evolving field, so I'm sure we'll see more progress on that front soon.
What about NASA? Any limitations there?
With NASA, it's really important to find the right scale factor. This factor controls how much influence the negative prompt has on the final image.
So it's like finding the right balance between what you want and what you don't want in the image.
Yeah, exactly. If the scale factor is too low, the negative prompt won't have much effect. But if it's too high, it can overpower the positive prompt and you end up with something completely different.
So finding that sweet spot is key.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Anything else to keep in mind?
One more thing. The way NASA is currently designed, it works best with models that use cross-attention layers. So there are some architectural limitations to consider.
That's a good reminder that even the most groundbreaking technologies have areas for improvement.
For sure. But even with those limitations, SNOPI is a significant step forward. It's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with one-step diffusion models.
It really is. And it makes you wonder what's next for this technology. What other breakthroughs are just around the corner?
It's an exciting time to be following this field, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But as we get caught up in the excitement of all these advancements, it's important to remember the bigger picture.
What do you mean?
Well, AI image generation. It's not just about making cool pictures. It has the potential to impact society in profound ways.
You're right. It's a powerful tool. And with any powerful tool comes responsibility.
The research itself acknowledges the potential for misuse. Things like creating misleading content or deepfakes. It's a reminder that we can't just focus on the technical aspects. We need to be thinking about the ethical implications as well.
Absolutely. We need to be having open and honest conversations about responsible AI development.
Yeah.
And making sure that this technology is used for good.
It feels like we're navigating uncharted territory here.
Yeah.
There's so many possibilities. But we need to proceed with caution and foresight.
I agree. This technology has the potential to unlock incredible levels of creativity and innovation, but we need to make sure it benefits humanity as a whole.
It's a balancing act for sure. This deep dive into SNOPI has been a fascinating journey. We've covered so much ground, from the technical details to the potential applications and even the ethical considerations.
It's been a great discussion, and it highlights how important it is to have these conversations about AI innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It requires collaboration, careful thought, and a commitment to responsible development.
And ultimately, it's up to all of us to shape the future of this technology. So we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on SNOPI and the future of AI image generation? What excites you? What concerns you? These are all important questions to consider as we venture into this uncharted territory together.
We're all on this journey together. Let's make sure we're headed in the right direction.
It's a lot to think about, isn't it? We've gone from blurry pixels to these incredible photorealistic images in what feels like no time at all. But, you know, as cool as all this technology is, we can't forget that it exists in the real world with real people.
Exactly. We need to think about the impact it's going to have and make sure we're using it responsibly.
The researchers actually talk about that in the paper. They bring up the potential for misuse. You know, like generating fake images that could mislead people or cause harm.
Yeah, that's a real concern. We've already seen issues with things like deepfakes, and this technology could make it even easier to create realistic but completely fabricated images.
It's definitely something we need to be talking about more. How do we balance the incredible potential of AI image generation with the potential risks?
It's a tough question. We need to be having those difficult conversations about responsible AI development and figuring out how to put safeguards in place.
It feels like we're in uncharted territory here. We're dealing with a technology that has the power to completely change the way we create and consume images. But we're still figuring out what that means for society.
It's both exciting and a little bit daunting, isn't it? We have this incredible tool with so many possibilities, but we need to proceed carefully and make sure we're using it for good.
Absolutely. And it's not just up to the researchers or the developers, it's up to all of us to be aware of the potential implications and make sure we're using this technology ethically.
I completely agree. This deep dive into SNOPI has been a great example of that. We've gone beyond just the technical details and explored the bigger picture. We've talked about the potential applications, but we've also talked about the ethical considerations.
And that's what we want to encourage our listeners to do as well. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and be part of the conversation. What do you think about the future of AI image generation? What excites you? What concerns you?
We're all on this journey together. Let's make sure we're shaping the future of this technology in a way that benefits everyone.
That's a great way to put it. And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.